Okay. The live stream started, so about 5 more seconds.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting of the June 18th Town of Islip change of zone meeting to order. We have 8 change of zone public hearings scheduled for this evening. Item 2, hearing 2 has been adjourned, and we have 1 decision item. Just like to remind anyone that if you wish to speak on any of the hearings, please click on the Q&A, put in your name and address and which particular application you wish to comment on. So let us begin with the first scheduled public hearing, which is TC 5339 S4M LLC. I'd ask our town clerk, Olga Murray, to please read the hearing notice.
Thank you. TC 5339 S4M LLC. Notice is hereby given that due to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic and recent executive orders issued by the governor, the town board of the town of Islip will hold a public hearing on Thursday, June 18, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. on the application of S4M LLC. Applicant requests a change of zone from resident AA to general service T in order to legalize a non-degree granting school. Site plan modifications are required at this application. The environmental impacts will also be assessed on this property located in the Connecticut School District on the southwest corner of Biltmore Avenue and Idlehour Boulevard, 96 Biltmore Avenue, Oakdale, Town of Islip, Suffolk County, New York. The meeting will be held electronically via Zoom webinar instead of an in-person public meeting and will be streamed live over the internet. The format of this meeting is subject to change without notice. Instructions on how to access the Zoom webinar and/or live stream are available on the town's website, www.islipny.gov. Anyone interested in providing comments to the town board on this item are encouraged to do so in writing and prior to the date of this meeting. Town Board, Town of Islip, Olga H. Murray, Town Clerk.
Okay, then we will hear from the applicant on TC 5339. Excuse me, sir, you need to unmute.
My name is William Garbarino. I'm the attorney for the applicant, 40 Main Street, Sayville, New York. This is a matter for a change of zone from residential 2 to general service T in order to legalize a non-degree granting school. On May 6th, we were in front of the planning board on this matter. The application was granted by the planning board, and because this is a change of zone, we are now in front of the town board. This property was part of the Dowling campus. It is about 250 feet south of Montauk Highway. It's on the corner of Biltmore Avenue and Idlehour Boulevard. The building is not changed at all. We have not put any additions on it or whatever, but we're making some minor site plan modifications to the property. As a result of the planning board application, we entered into deed covenants and restrictions for certain improvements to the property. I defer to the town representative at this time with the right to come back if address any questions and maybe needed to be addressed.
At this point, are there any questions for the applicant? Okay. Sean, if you will.
Thank you, Supervisor Carpenter, members of the board. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes to legalize a non-degree granting school on a property that has historically been used as either a Dowling College facility and previously before that a temple. The The proposed covenants limit the property to a non-degree granting school or a single-family dwelling to prevent the property from morphing into too intense a use for this neighborhood. Should also be noted that the property will be improved with increased buffers to the residential uses, as well as increased landscaping along the streets. So with that, the staff has no objection to the application. We're here if you have any questions.
Okay, I'm not sure if anyone has signed up to speak, but I do want to put on the record, I received a letter today from Patrick and Audrey Collins oh, there they are. Hi. In total support of the application. Actually, I was very impressed with the letter. If I ever had an application for anything, I'd want you to write a letter for me.
Oh, thank
It was really done very well.
Thank you.
Has anyone signed up to speak on this? Okay, Audrey, did you want to?
So yeah, just hi, I'm Patrick. Patrick Collins, this is my wife, Audrey Collins. We live at 15 Idle Hour Boulevard, directly across the street from the school. We put everything that we wanted to say in the letter, so we won't go into too much detail. I just wanted to give a little bit of perspective. I've been living here for 3 years. I work from home. I can see the school all day from my workstation. You know, this is me trying to support this business. I think they're the greatest neighbors, you know, what we could ask for. And, you know, that's really all I have to say. Please, you know, don't give them a hard time. You know, small businesses are having a hard time enough as it is. Is there anything you'd like to add?
That's just really our main point, is that in light of the ongoing health crisis, small businesses are subjected to an unprecedented amount of pressure at this time. All we would ask for is that this business is allowed to thrive and succeed in the town of Oakdale and not have to worry about zoning or changes or anything that would put them in a position that they would not be able to continue to do business here. They do own this building and they are taxpayers. I know that they live in the town of Islip as well. So we really just want to see another small business succeed here. And in light of everything going on, we hope that the board agrees that they would be able to be rezoned and continue to serve the town of Islip, the children and the adults that take classes there. You know, we really want to see them here for the long term. So thank you so much for letting us speak, and thank you for reading our letter. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have anyone else who wishes to speak on this?
There is.
John Passamente, if you would just give your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is John Passanante. I reside at 31 Grassmere Avenue in Oakdale. I'm a 25-year resident, and I drive by that building every day, several times, and I have only seen improvements since they've been there. You know, it was empty for quite some time, as are a lot of the Dowling buildings. I think it's great that one is occupied and being used in a good way. I want to add that business is a family business, and it's a clean business. They don't produce any waste of any kind. You know, hardly even any garbage pickup. If you go by there, they got maybe one pail, less than most residents. There's no exhaust of any kind that comes out of the building, as there was when it belonged to Dowling. They would exhaust fumes and dust from their clay, the pottery, and all that. They had kilns there and all that stuff. And I agree with what Audrey and Patrick had to say about it being a difficult time for small businesses. You know, they've been unable to do business for 3 months. And, you know, if what they're asking for is an extension, I would hope that you would give it to them. I mean, I really would hope that they would not have to incur any unnecessary expenses to begin with. Quite frankly, I can't imagine what improvements would need to be made to that property for it to be necessary for them to have the business. I can't imagine what unnecessary expenses they would have to incur, you know, just to make this happen. You know, they serve many residents in the local area. They participate in the community as much as they can, and they're also residents themselves. I guess that's that. Oh, also I want to add that I've never, in driving by, I've never noticed any any problems with traffic. People, they do, people come and they park in that parking lot. And there's, not a lot of coming and going, just several, once or twice a day. There's some movement there, but, it's not massive and not disruptive in my opinion. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Is there anyone else who signed up to speak on this particular hearing? If not, I'd go back to the applicant. If you have any closing comments you'd like to make. If you could please unmute.
Just that we think this application changing from residence AA to GST is changing to a transitional zoning category, which we think is appropriate for this area here because it's not far from Montclair, and it does form a good buffer. As far as the improvements, they're not substantial. We're closing a curb cut for traffic purposes. We are going to plant some trees, but you're correct. This property doesn't require monumental changes, but we're required under the law to consider environmental output, and we're also considered to address those issues. So I have nothing else to say, and I submit that I hope you grant this application.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any comments or questions for the board, for the applicant or the department at this time? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that
I'll
we
make a
close the
motion.
public hearing, offer a negative declaration, and move for the adoption of the change of zone.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Councilman O'Connor, second by Councilman Cochran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, item number 2 has been adjourned. We will move to 3, TC 5341, the McDonald's Corporation. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. And Mr. Town Attorney, I'm going to read an abbreviated version.
That's
If I
fine.
may, without all of the coronavirus.
Yep, it's all on the record before.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. I'll read an
That's-
abbreviated.
thank you.
TC 5341 McDonald's Corporation. Applicant requests a clarification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 5335 to allow a pylon sign to remain. The environmental impacts will be assessed on this property located in the Connecticut School District and located on the southeast corner of Sunrise Highway Service Road, State Road 27, number 4498, and Sycamore Avenue, Oakdale, numbers 4498, Sunrise Highway, Town of Islip, Suffolk County, New York. Town Board, Town of Islip, Olga Murray, Town Clerk.
Okay, if we could hear from the applicant, please. Is the applicant here on this application?
Yes, I am. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
great.
Madam Supervisor?
Yeah, now I can.
Good evening, Madam
Could you name
Supervisor,
and
members of the
address for
town
the
board.
record, please?
Sure. Keith Brown, Brown and Altman LLP, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301 West, Melville, New York, 11747. I'll be very brief. This matter was before the town board back on Thursday, November 21st. And but for an oversight in the conditions of approval that limited the signage on Sunrise Highway to a monument style sign. It was an oversight. We weren't aware of it at the time. And the pylon sign that is existing there now was not even part of the original application. So we asked that the covenants be amended to delete that sentence, which limits there to be only a monument style sign on the property. That's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Sean, department?
Sure. As stated by Mr. Brown, the applicant wishes to retain the existing pylon sign instead of a monument sign. Given that the sign is on Sunrise Highway, is set back from the road, and is not unusually tall, the planning staff has no objection to the requested change.
Terrific. Has anyone signed up to speak on this?
Nope.
No? Mary, are you keeping track of who signed up?
I am not. I am keeping track of whoever speaks right now, and I'm looking for them as best I can in the attendee list and writing.
Okay, great. All right, well, I'll just ask, I don't think anyone has signed up to speak on this. Are there any questions of the board for either the applicant or the department? It seems pretty cut and dry here. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing, accept the negative declaration, and grant the application.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Bergen, second by Councilman Mullen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Stay safe.
You too. We will now go to the fourth item on the agenda, TC 5342 North Point Development. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. TC 5342 North Point Development LLC. Applicant requests a change of zone from Residence AA District to General Service D District in order to construct a mini storage warehouse. The environmental impacts will be assessed on this property located in the Connecticut Central School District, located on southwest corner of Sunrise Highway, Service Road, State Route 27, and Sunrise and Oakdale Bohemia Road, Oakdale, 0 Sunrise Highway, Town of Islip, Suffolk County, New York. Town Board, Town of Islip, Olga Murray, Town Clerk.
Okay, is the applicant here to speak?
Yes, good night. Good evening, Madam Supervisor, members of the Town Board. My name is David Leno from the law firm of Rifkin Radler with an address at 926 RXR Plaza, Uniondale, New York. I'm here tonight on behalf of North Point Development with regard to their proposed development of the property located at the southwest corner of Sunrise Highway, the Sunrise Highway Service Road and Oakdale Bohemia Road. The request that's before you tonight is with regard to the change of the zoning designation from Residence AA to General Service D. This is in connection with the construction of a mini storage warehouse at that location. Along with me tonight on behalf of North Point Development, I have Pat Lord and Michael Johnson. I also have Kevin Pollitt, who is the architect on this project, and I have Dan Peveraro from the Loro Group, who is the engineer for this project. As the application and the documents submitted confirm, the property right now is currently vacant. It is just shrubland right now. Based on conversations with the owner of the property prior to our client's contractual involvement with it, there has been interest, or there was interest in developing the site potentially as a gas station, convenience store, or a medical office. This site became particularly desirable for our client because of the town board's action in the past with regard to rezoning a portion of this property, General Service D, in order to promote the particular use that we're before you tonight to seek approval of. As you know, mini storage warehouses in general are a benign use when it comes to the surrounding area. They are noted for their low traffic generation, and they do not provide excess pedestrian traffic, noises, density, or any other common complaints with regard to other zoning project types. When the town did rezone a portion of this property, however, for our purposes, it was not large enough to accommodate the footprint. So therefore, we're asking for the change of zone on the adjoining Residence AA parcel to the to General Service D. Prior to tonight's meeting before you, we have met with the planning staff extensively, and there were 2 hearings before the planning board. As a result of extensive modifications and improvements to the plans, we're happy to submit the plans that are before you tonight. There have been substantial changes from our client's first offering with regard to the reduction of height and the improving of the architectural features of the project. It should be noticed that the only variance that needs to be sought in connection with this project will be the FAR. When it was originally submitted, there was potentially a height variance and that is no longer an issue. The plans have been revised to eliminate that concern. Other than the FAR, the proposed plans are otherwise compliant with the zoning code provisions. As we have been advised by the planning department, we understand that the town board may have reservations about the FAR that's being suggested for this project. However, we would like to address this. It should be noted that FAR, while it is an effective tool for reducing the density of a project, it usually is better served to help reduce the density of office, retail, and multifamily uses because of the attempt to reduce the amount of vehicular or foot traffic that those projects may create. I think that the application of an FAR limit to a mini storage location may be misplaced. The proposed use has already been recognized by this board as being a low traffic generator and would make an ideal buffer between commercial areas and the adjoining residential areas. The project, other than the FAR, is compliant with all of the other zoning bulk requirements, which include setbacks, parking, and height. So we don't have those additional concerns with regard to this application. Also, in order to make this project more palatable for the local community, the entire building was lowered. In essence, the site was available to make us lower the entire project. Therefore, the height variance is not required. So from any outward appearances, the plans that are before you roughly would be a completely zoning compliant project, but for the FAR. So whether this board has a concern about the FAR from 0.65 to 1, give or take, the project would be, from all outward appearances, zoning compliant. We're really talking about a basement of FAR to make this project viable for our client. We believe that the additional FAR that is being sought, because it is underground, will not cause any of the negative impacts to the surrounding community that were first heard before the planning board. If the project was built, it would basically be the same with a 0.65 FAR or 1 FAR from every outward appearance. Again, we are talking about a basement that is increasing the FAR. The problem is that increased FAR is necessary in order for the project to be financially viable. We know that the town has already granted several applications for an FAR of similar mini storage locations that have an FAR close to the one that is being requested by our client. We acknowledge that those are done in certain industrial zones and not in the General Service D as we are in. However, because of the mitigating factors that we have employed, being otherwise zoning compliant, upgrading substantially the facade and the architectural appearances of the project, which Mr. Pollitt will talk about, I think that you will see that we've made every effort, our client has made every effort to try to be as accommodating and to be the proper buffer that this use could be. While the FAR number may seem high as a number, variances, as this will go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, are determined by the potential material impact it'll have on the community. It is our contention that the FAR that we're requesting will not have a material impact on the balance of the community because of the use that we're seeking at the site. At this point, I would like to introduce Pat Lord from North Point, who will talk to you about the company and the applicant itself.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Council, for your time. I really appreciate it. We've gotten to know the planning board members over the past week. Now I'd like to share with you a little about us. We're based out of Kansas City. Our brand is Beyond Self-Storage. We have 50 plus open and operating facilities under construction or in pre-development in 20 markets across the United States. We are owners and operators who want to be part of the community long-term. Our core values are always do the right thing, practice financial discipline, put people first, live generously, and take ownership. A few of those examples of the core value, live generously. During this recent COVID pandemic, we raised nearly $35,000 for harvesters in our local community. And a few months back when this first started, our CEO bought 50,000 COVID tests for our community. These are just a few examples of how we're involved in the community and not just our local community, but in the markets we're involved in. Our success can be attributed to not just the fact that we're a developer, but we are also an owner and operator. We are in this for the long term. We are a top-line facility and operation staff in a very stable asset class, which can endure change. While many developers right now are putting a pause on projects, our financial discipline has led to the green light on this project. We use a unique data-driven approach. We identified an undersupply and self-storage here, and the comps in and around Islip have a very high occupancy. And this is at the end of May. So this was through COVID, and yet we're seeing 95% occupancies for self-storage. So as I mentioned before, this is a very stable asset class. So Dave mentioned the key question, why the increase in FAR? Why the basement addition? A couple unique items which necessitate this. We have an enclosed climate-controlled facility with no row storage. This includes an internal loading area, preventing vehicle noise and headlights. Also, we have a state-of-the-art building meeting the Superior Architecture Code. This necessitated the increase of cost. Again, we're not the old single-story storage. This is state-of-the-art, a Class A climate-controlled facility. Kevin, our architect, will speak in a little bit, and Sean went back and forth for weeks fine-tuning this architecture piece. These are challenges that any developer would encounter to meet this superior architecture piece. And as you'll see in our rendering, there is not a better facility. By increasing this FAR, this allows for a $14 million project to move forward, generating $300,000 in taxes per year that currently are not being generated with a vacant parcel. And this will also include local jobs. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and hand it now over to our civil engineer, Dan Peveraro from the Laurel Group.
Good evening. My name is Dan Peveraro. I'm with the Laurel Group. I'm the civil engineer on the project. The site is located on the southwest corner of Sunrise Highway and Oakdale Bohemia Road. We're proposing a full access curb cut on Oakdale Bohemia Road that enters the front portion of the site. You've probably seen some mini storages at this point. This one's pretty typical in terms of the layout. There's a non-secure area up front by the office space that you can enter, park your car, go into the office space, rent a unit. And then there's a secure area behind a fence that is at the rear of the site. Once you go through a gate, you get back to the rear of the site. You can go into the building over there, empty your stuff, and exit back out onto Oakdale Bohemia Road. A couple of items to note with this specific building, as Mr. Lord had mentioned, there's a drive-through area that is not typical of self-storage in this region. And it really is a higher end amenity where you can enter the area. It's climate controlled. You get out of the rain. You get away from the neighbors and no one sees you. The door is closed. You empty your car, go into the warehouse, get back to your car, drive out, and leave. And that is really something that is unique to this project. I've worked on several of these warehouses at this point, and I haven't seen that yet. And I do think it's a nice amenity here. Additionally, we are proposing 30 feet of landscaping along all frontages, and we work with planning to really fill in the landscaping along the road frontages. Additionally, our drive-up units had been located along the southerly building wall, which we work with planning, and we're able to move them facing Sunrise. So they no longer face the residences to the south. And that was, actually there's only about half as many drive-up units as there were, and they're now facing towards the north and buffered from the street with extensive plantings, which see on the rendering, as well as fence. The buffer to the south ranges from about 25 feet to 40 feet. We're proposing to keep as many trees as are in there, and then infill with as many trees as we can get in there to really get that buffer as densely populated with tree growth as we can get it. When we sort of laid this out at the beginning, we were really trying to get as much of the activity of the site away from that southerly border, so that you see the drive-through is basically pushed all the way north. The office and the parking is pushed to the north. Now those drive-up units are on the north. So really the only activity that's going to be happening on the southern side of the property is an exit drive-through lane. And really, as you're probably aware with these, the self-storage warehouses are very benign use with very low traffic. They don't generate a lot of traffic on a day-to-day basis. People come in, they drop their stuff off for weeks or months at a time. That's might be the only time you see them for a while. So that's important to know for a couple of reasons. The first is the impact for the project in general from a warehouse perspective, but also from an FAR perspective, because the difference between this project as is with a 1 FAR and this project with a 0.65 FAR, but with the extra square footage in the basement, the difference really is a negligible amount of additional trips, a handful of cars. It's not like that additional space is what you see from an extra third of retail or something like that. You're talking a handful of cars in the peak hour really is the only difference. So as Mr. Leno mentioned, if you were to stand on the sidewalk here in two different realities, one with a 1.0 FAR and one with a 0.65, there would be no discernible difference between the two. We also worked with planning staff extensively on the architecture of the building, and Kevin Pollitt is available to speak on that.
Kevin Pollitt, 4825 Northwest 41st Street in Riverside, Missouri, 64150. Good evening, Madam Supervisor and members of the board. I'm the project architect for the proposed project, and I've had the pleasure of working with the planning staff diligently and thoroughly since the beginning of this year to extensively enhance the architectural aesthetic of the proposed project. I'll briefly be speaking to these enhancements, which have reduced the building's mass, visual impact, have enhanced the overall aesthetic through the utilization of superior architecture guidelines of the town of Islip, and have strategically used architectural characteristics from buildings that are a focal point in the community as inspiration for architectural features on the proposed building. These enhancements also have allowed the building to fit within the design context of the surroundings and positive visual improvement to the built space. A few of the architectural features that have been updated after working with staff. We used the Oakdale train station as a visual case study, which is also a focal point in the community, by adding large brick arches at the main entry and above the drive-through area windows. The color palette of the building changed from cooler gray tones to a warmer tone, tan and red for all materials on each facade to fit within their surrounding context. The windows on the exterior facades have been resized and spaced accordingly to reflect the smaller, more residential scale. The arched windows were also added within the brick arches themselves, which enforced the visual presence of the brick arch spans. A more defined hip style roof has been added, which softens the roof line and mimics the roof styles of the surrounding context while keeping the overall height under 35 feet, as was previously mentioned. The elevations were broken up vertically by using different materials. As you can see in the elevations, a brick knee wall horizontal siding and the roof itself, the material changes subdivide the building face and facades into smaller areas and reduce that appearance of the height. In conjunction with those brick archways, we also added brick accent columns at the more prominent areas, both at the main entry and the drive entry. The brick-based knee wall was also increased in height along Sunrise Highway to provide a more prominent presence. And the south elevation that faces the neighboring residential area has also been improved from the previous elevations when working with staff to match the other elevation materials. If there are any questions from the board, I'm open and available.
Are there any questions of
I have a question.
Jim? Sure.
Yes,
Councilman O'Connor.
thank you. Gentlemen, I'm looking at the site plan that has been offered in support of the application, and I see the entranceway off of Oakdale Bohemia Road, and it seems that traffic will travel as it enters the site to the right, traveling, I guess, northbound along Oakdale Bohemia Road, and then one-way traffic all the way around the building until it exits again and heads, I guess, on the south side of the building, heading east out of the property. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Do you mind if I was just going to add that that's if you use the drive-through portion. If you decide just to go into the office, right on that portion along Bohemia Road, that's two-way.
Okay, so that area along Oakdale Bohemia Road is two-way, and the parking there reflects that. I think that would be for the people who are going right into the office. There would be those parking spots that I see on that side of the building there.
Right. So if you were to enter the site and park in those front parking stalls, you could then just exit out onto Oakdale Bohemia Road. It isn't until you enter the rear, like the secured portion of the site, either via the drive-through area or the gate, that it then is one way, counterclockwise.
So is it possible with the technology we have that you can indicate on the site plan for me where the entrance is to the drive-through? I think I see it, but I want to be sure I understand it.
I think I can do that. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yeah, we're seeing your screen. Go ahead.
Okay. So you would enter the site via the curb cut here, come over this way, and then the drive-through, you'd enter over through here, and then you could leave. Or if you weren't going through the drive-through, you could come over here. There's a gate that would lift, and then you could come into the back of the site that way.
Okay, so the drive-through then is to allow your customers who are using the facility to come in and unload inside and then leave through I guess the exit. Is that correct?
Right. You would be inside the building. A gate would roll up. You bring your car inside, unload. The gate behind you would drop. You unload everything. It's climate controlled. You're out of the weather. Your car's off, and do your business, and then get back in your car and go on your way.
All right, so looking at the elevations that have been offered in support of the application, that bowed window showing the east elevation with the kind of the archway, that's the entrance to the drive-through on Oakdale Bohemia Road. Is that correct?
So this would be the entrance to the drive-through here.
Okay.
And this is the office area.
Okay. And then the exit to the drive-through would be on the west elevation, I guess?
Correct.
Correct.
Up the elevations here. Right. And that would be
right. I see it. Yep. Okay. And going back to the site plan, how far is it from the south side of the building, the south edge of the building, to the property line?
It's a minimum of 45.5 feet.
That's the requirement. That's the setback requirement. But how far are you?
We're 45 and a half feet at this corner from the building to the property line.
And the only thing that
The
you're going to have
requirement,
along
I
there,
think, is actually for a rear yard, it'll be 35 feet.
so there'll be no parking along that area, just exiting. And I noticed that you have some plantings there as well to buffer that south side from the residences. Is that accurate?
Right. The idea is this whole southerly area, we're going to maintain as much of the existing vegetation as we can, and then supplement with a pretty dense row of trees here. And as much as the planning board would ask of us, if not more, that's what we're planning on doing there.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Certainly, Councilwoman.
It's either one of them could answer it. It's supposed to be a 50 foot buffer, right? Not a 30, whatever he just said, 35 foot. So he's getting relaxation on the buffer on the residential side?
No, the buffer to residential is only 25 foot required.
Okay, all right, okay.
Which we're meeting at a minimum, and it actually goes up to about 40 feet at its maximum.
Thank you.
When you spoke, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but you talked about all of the jobs this was going to bring. How many jobs actually do we see at a mini storage?
So we have 2 staff and then a regional manager. And then as we grow on Long Island, this is going to be our kind of our landmark site on Long Island. And then as we grow, the staff would continue with district managers, regional managers, and additional staff. So, and the jobs I was referencing earlier as well were the local construction jobs.
Okay.
Maintenance jobs associated with the project.
And just to follow up on your question, Supervisor, hey, Pat, if you could just advise, in addition to the jobs that are going to be created by the construction, and this is approximately, I don't know if you told the board that it's approximately a $14 to $15 million project as far as an investment is concerned. In addition to the local construction jobs and the full-time jobs that you're creating on site, you also do avail yourself of local vendors when it comes to landscaping, security, etc. If you could elaborate on that.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. We work with the local contractor here to manage the local construction jobs, whether it's the building or the site work or landscaping or maintenance, for all those various jobs that are associated with this facility. So we hire a local contractor.
So you hire local, I'm sorry, Ms. Supervisor, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So you're gonna hire local contractors to do all of the construction jobs, all the sub jobs, all of that?
We work with the general contractor to hire the jobs that are appropriate for the market. So we work with him and let that local GC manage appropriately.
Okay, so the answer to my question is probably no, right? Because you're not answering my question.
No, I would say the opposite. Probably, I would say in almost every market, what we find is when we work with those local general contractors, they use local labor.
I'm done.
I had one more question, if I could, Madam Supervisor.
Certainly, Councilman.
Gentlemen, on the site plan, sometimes these self-storage generates some waste when people decide that whatever it is they're storing, they don't want to keep it anymore, so they discard it. Is there a dumpster going to be located on the site plan somewhere?
Dan, I think you were muted. If you could just reference again where the dumpster location is near Sunrise Highway.
The trash enclosure is located in the corridor over here, pretty much as far away from the residences. The house adjacent to us is over here, and there's some over here. So we try to get it as far away from them as possible. Also, typically, you're not supposed to really throw your trash out from your unit. That's usually policed. But that's usually frowned upon.
I'm just concerned, if I can, Mr. Engineer and Mr. Applicant, I'm concerned with the local neighbor who is going to be faced with the situation where a dumpster is going to be on site, and those dumpsters are going to have to be emptied at some point. And, you know, we hear complaints as elected officials in the area of folks showing up to empty dumpsters at 4 o'clock in the morning, and really nobody wants to be subjected to that. So I don't know. I guess we'll wait to hear from Sean if there's anything that we could do to prevent that. But it's just a caution that I'm offering to the applicant.
Thanks, sir. And I'll add that we don't allow any public dumping. Again, this is a gated access, so there would be no public dumping that would occur.
I'm not talking about public dumping. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, sir. I'm not talking about public dumping. I'm talking about your customers using your dumpster and then ultimately having a contractor who's going to have to empty that dumpster. And that truck rolling through at 3 o'clock in the morning is not going to be happy for the folks who sit on this board when we get those complaints.
Agree, and we would do everything we could to ensure that that does not happen.
Thank you.
I have another question, Madam Supervisor.
Sure.
I'm concerned about the size of the building, and I've been getting calls to my office with regards to the size of the structure. If your application, I just want to make sure that you understand that if your application is denied with a no tonight, it would be, and I'll refer to the town attorney, but I think 2 years before you can come back to make another application with regards to the size of your building. So is there any wiggle room for you to downsize the size of this building or no?
Thanks, ma'am. Great question. And we have brought the size down over time, and we are as basically low as we can go when we made some adjustments and took the third floor and buried into a basement. So
then let me pose my question to Sean. Sean Colligan over at the town. Sean, tell me, since I've been briefed, has the size of the building changed?
No, it still remains at a proposed 1.0 FAR, approximately 121,000 square feet.
Thank you very much.
I'll just elaborate on that real quick. From the time that we initially started to look at the site and ran some initial analysis, and then we brought it down to the one internally and then proposed it.
All right, it'd probably be a good idea at this point, unless someone has a really pressing question, to hear from the department. Because I know there were some comments in the staff analysis that I'd like to have addressed specifically to the point of the FAR. So Sean, why don't you go through your presentation?
Sure. So as stated by the applicant, the mini storage warehouse is a traffic-friendly use, and it was specifically introduced in the code for Sunrise Highway and the Long Island Expressway to encourage certain locations to have these types of uses, because we do hear traffic complaints. They're generally quiet. They do generate tax base without, a lot of benefits. So that was the primary driver for adding it to the code. With regards to the specific application, the applicant is exceeding the FAR by approximately 33%. And should the board grant this application, the applicant still needs to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, we're not certain how they're going to act because it is the first time they'd hear an application for this specific zoning district. And generally, they're concerned about a precedent. But again, this will be the first time. So this is kind of uncharted territory for the staff to make any judgment calls on that. With regards to the building, we did work and go back and forth heavily with the architect to make this kind of a transitional look between the residential architecture to the south and residences, and while still maintaining a little bit of a commercial look along Sunrise Highway. And we also try to make it kind of fit in with the overall motif of Oakdale, with some of the archways, the additional windows, and the brick look. So in terms of what the applicant has stated his needs are in terms of making this functional, we feel we've done the best we can to present as palatable an application for this board as possible. It should be noted that if the board were to grant this application and they didn't get an FAR variance, the building would still look the same from the outside as it's being presented today, because that basement is being buried. You're not going to see that, although it does add to the bulk of the building overall because it's included in the FAR.
Sean, when the district was created and the FAR was changed, what would it have been prior to that change along Sunrise Highway and the LIE?
The general service D is limited to 0.4, so it's roughly 50% more than what would normally allow. And that's because, again, many storage warehouses are benign. They don't generate traffic or require a lot of parking. So in this case, higher FAR doesn't create any adverse impact for this very specific use. Now, if it were to become an office or some other sort of use, yes, that would generate more traffic and that would require a lot more parking spots, which this site couldn't accommodate based on the way it's being proposed to be developed. So should the use change in the future, this would not be like an approvable site plan, so to speak, for any other type of use. It would really be limited to the mini storage use. Otherwise, we'd see a lot of adverse impacts if we allowed the building to remain outside of the mini.
Certainly, the option is there for us if we choose to approve it with a covenant stating that it could only, that FAR could only run with a mini storage unit.
That's right, and that's something the staff would support, because again, it could be disastrous should it be converted to a use that generated any more traffic than what a mini storage warehouse would.
Okay, so other than mini storage, no one would have a right to that FAR.
And they shouldn't.
Okay. All right, are there any questions or comments for the department?
Yes, I have another question. So Sean, let's say, I feel like there's starting to become sort of an oversaturation of these mini storage facilities on Long Island. And if these folks go out of business and they're not able to, sustain themselves, and then we have a covenant on there that says it can only be a mini storage facility, then
no, that's not what I was saying. Excuse me. I didn't say that.
I didn't say you said it. I'm just saying what I'm concerned about. I didn't say you said that at all, Supervisor. I'm just saying.
What I was suggesting, just to clarify, I want to make sure that you're commenting on what I said, that the covenant would say that that particular FAR would only run with a mini storage unit, that if another use were to come in, they would have to go back to what the FAR was. I wasn't saying that it only be limited to mini storage.
No, I completely understand that, but the FAR would already have been granted and the building would be built and standing and it would be there. So they would already have exceeded the FAR because the building would be built.
No, I think Mr. Colgan said that the building, whether they get the FAR or not, would be exactly the same because the additional FAR would be utilized underground. So the size of the building as you see it now would be the same. Is that correct, Sean?
So, yeah, so just, I guess to clarify, if they built a 0.65 building to code from the outside, it would still appear the same as if it were built to 1.0, because again, roughly 1/3 of the building is on the ground. So, it would look the same. So the bulk, the look of it would have a similar impact, so to speak.
I'm still not comfortable with the size of the building, but okay, thank you.
I have a question if I may.
Sure.
Sean, the supervisor had mentioned putting in a covenant and restriction that would limit the approved and what would otherwise be an FAR that would require a variance in the covenant and restrictions. But I don't see that in the proposed covenant and restrictions that we received tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in retrospect, that's something we should add if the board were to move forward on the.
Well, obviously, the applicant would have to agree to it before we could add it. So I guess that's a good question for the applicant at this time. If this board were to conclude that to allow this FAR, we would have to amend the proposed covenants and restrictions to limit the FAR to this specific application, and anybody else coming after you would have to come back and to this board, or to this body, I should say, to ease those covenants and restrictions. So that's a question, I guess, to Mr. Lino.
Yeah, Councilman, what I would say is, yes, we would agree if this board was to grant the change of zone that we're requesting tonight, and as a condition, a modification of the covenants and restrictions was asked for, that if it changed use from mini storage to any other use, that FAR would not apply. We are fine with that covenant and restriction. Also, as you noted earlier, to the degree that the covenant and restrictions need to be revised in order to make sure that garbage removal will be done at a time that is amenable to the town or the town board within the specifics, we have no problem adding language to that effect to protect the neighboring properties from any of the issues that you had suggested earlier. One other point is also in connection with this application, and Mr. Colgan will correct me if I'm wrong, we have an obligation to submit a surety bond that in the event for whatever reason, just say the project, it's built, it's operating, there's a problem, and mini storage is no longer necessary or needed in this area for whatever reason, there is a surety bond that our client is going to be paying for while they're operating the facility, that if that property has to be, I think it's for the purposes of demolition, it would be demolished on our client's dime by virtue of that surety bond, so that the town is not put in a bad spot as a result.
Yeah, that's a requirement of the code for that FAR.
All right. Madam Supervisor, may I
Well, may you what?
speak?
Certainly.
So I feel like there's still some fluid movement here, and some changes and some adjustments that still need to be made, which I think we should all consider.
Okay, well, thank you for that. We still have to hear from the public. I'm not sure if anyone has signed up to speak on this particular application.
Yes, we do have about 5 people that would like to speak.
Okay, so perhaps we should go there and then come back.
Yeah.
All right, so first speaker, if you would raise your hand.
I'm moving them into panelists right now.
Okay, thank you.
There you are.
Hello?
Yes, if you would, just your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address your comments.
Okay.
So, Bianca?
Bianca Beata Giurato. I live on 201 Waterford Road, Upton, New York. And I will speak on behalf of my next door neighbor who wasn't able to attend the meeting tonight, and myself. So I'm just going to read my statement that I wrote.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I stated previously, I am worried about privacy and safety in our neighborhood regarding to the plans for the North Point storage facility. I don't know what kind of people and crowding would the facility bring. Additional, I am concerned about the traffic and lights around the property. I am afraid that this neighborhood would feel less safe and the value of our properties will go down. Further, have there been any discussion what kind of privacy would be provided for the residents who live right behind the building, so we don't have to see the storage facility? And this has always been a residential neighborhood. I feel that the storage warehouse so close to our property will be disastrous for our community and may alter, the neighborhood permanently. I hope that the town board reconsider those plans and do not zone it from residential AA to general residential. And I'm afraid, the other thing I just want to bring it up is the trees behind the property. The shrubing and little tiny trees wouldn't really provide any privacy or anything else to all the neighbors right behind it. The trees mostly is going to be removed by building that building. And to my consideration, this building will be actually huge. From our property, I will be able to see this, during the summer, seeing the trees, it's great, but during the spring and fall and winter, that's what we're gonna see. It's the Sunrise Highway and the building right occupied by the storage facility. So I just feel that it's just too big and too many people will come and go, and it's just too small for the corner of the residential area. I appreciate your time and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bianca. Next speaker. Is that Jeffrey?
Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Jeff Donlin, how are you?
Hey, Jeffrey Donlin. Your name and
Yes.
address for the record, please.
Jeffrey Robert Donlin, 90 Wexford Drive, Oakdale, New York. There's a few things that I wanted to bring up with regard to this. First being the change of zoning is something that I would beg of the town of Islip not to grant, because when you put certain covenants and restrictions in place with regard to going from a residential AA to a general services or a D, your zoning isn't going to change back when they leave, when it fails, when whatever. You could set specific covenants in place that were discussed already and ad nauseum, so I'm not going to bring that up. Oddly enough, educated as an architect and owning a house there for over 24 years, I find it really strange that the location of a facility that is essentially going to be fenced in, very, very apparent to the corner between two elementary schools where you have children walking. You have possibly one of the worst corners of Sycamore, of Oakdale Bohemia Road, and the service road of Sunrise Highway. As an ex-West Sable fireman, I've responded to many, many, many accidents there. Now we're going to introduce different traffic. So I'm not questioning the volume of traffic, because I understand environmental controls and environmental impacts more than you think I do, or I should say more than I'm known to have. But it's the type of traffic we're talking about. We're not just introducing vehicular traffic into a self-storage facility. We're introducing box vans. We're introducing a monthly in and out where you're going to get an exchange of larger vehicles coming in around the 1st, leaving around the 15th, and creating what I see as an unsafe and honestly, without better traffic controls on that site plan, meaning there's no lights involved. You've got one-way dead-end situation happening. You've got entry and exit onto a secondary road that is already overtaxed, if anybody would actually sit on that corner, from 2 p.m. until 7 p.m. So I'm a little concerned that without further investigation from the town, obviously, I am not a proponent for having this, albeit not a lot of clientele, as was discussed, but it's the type of clientele that we're talking about. Not to mention what was already mentioned by my esteemed tax-paying colleague. The values of our homes are going to plummet. It's essentially going to look like a very industrial area for the warm hamlet section of Islip called Oakdale, which is honestly over the last 10 years with no direction has really kind of lost some guidance space, in my opinion. However, we don't want to continually make it look like an industrial park. We already have enough truck traffic going up and down Oakdale Bohemia Road with the facility that we have for I think it's a food storage place at the end near the railroad tracks, which we're already dealing with semi-tractor trailers. So let's add some people that are going to rent box vans, not understand how to drive them, and possibly hit one of our children. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Donlin. Your comments are duly noted. Thank you. I just want to remind the speakers, you do have 3 minutes. So, Monique?
Yes. Hi, how are you? My name is Monique. I live at 126 Oakdale Bohemia Road. We're directly next door to the proposed lot. My family bought this property June 1st, 1999. We've been here for a very long time, and we think that it really needs to be rethought because we don't think a mini storage facility would go well here. On top of what everyone else has stated, with the buffer of the trees and everything, seeing right into it, having to be in our yard and having people be in a building looking directly into us, where your yard is supposed to be your sanctuary. And then there's also, it may be a secure self-storage, which is different from a regular, it's going to be a mini storage, which may be a little different from a regular self-storage, but storage in general, no matter what kind it is going to bring in criminal activity. I mean, breaking and entering and all kinds of stuff that is not something that we wish to deal with. Also, let's say someone goes to go into the facility, they don't have a key or a passcode to get into the gate. Are they going to my property fence to get into there? And then, God forbid, someone got hurt. It's just going to be a very big eyesore. And then also the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless says that recently there's 3,868 homeless people in Nassau and Suffolk County. And approximately 7% of all homeless people have resorted to sleeping in their mini storage units at one point or another. And 7% doesn't seem like much, but that's 270 people. And the other concern that we have is adding traffic. We're at a double yellow here on the corner of Sunrise Highway Service Road. And we've got a stop sign at Oakdale Bohemia Road and Waterford Road that nobody stops at. We have a lot of, you'll hear tires screeching and cars stopping short. And we're just concerned there's that exit from the drive-through that's going to be literally next door to my property. And it's just going to add more and more traffic to an area that has plenty of traffic to begin with. And then lastly, of course, there's the woods that are there. I understand you're going to be adding more shrubs and trees and stuff like that, but the woods that are there now, you wouldn't believe, we see cardinals, chipmunks, squirrels. I mean, deer comes into our yard, and I understand you want to replace that shrubbery, but it just wouldn't be the same as what's naturally there. So thank you for your time, and I really hope that the board reconsiders this gigantic storage facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I don't see any, Mary. Okay.
Yeah, not that I see, Madam Supervisor, but we do have one phone number listed that, JR, did you want to explain how that works?
Well, we do have one phone number listed. If that person does want to speak on an application, they can just press *9 and we'll see their hand raise, and Mary can bring them into the chat. But I don't see anything, so I think we've addressed all of the public comments that want to.
Let us then go back to the applicant to respond to any of these comments, especially the comments about privacy. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, just to address those concerns. So this is a safe, secure, gated access, well-lit facility. The option for people to live in the unit is just not there. There's cameras everywhere. There's staff. There's no electricity and water in the units. So it's closely monitored. And it's a very safe and secure facility.
And Madam Supervisor, just one additional point. we're not coming to change the entire zone to accommodate this use. The board has already, by virtue of its own volition, the zoning has changed on, more than half of this location already. It is a general service D. We're just looking to get the change of zone for the adjoining. So there is a possibility, if we were not the buyers, the purchasers, that there could be someone else who could come in with the use that's there now for general service D and occupy it for one of the permitted uses that are permitted under the town code for that section. So I think that is telling. With regard to the need for this type of facility, I think that, and I know we're all sick of hearing the term the new normal, what's going to be happening is office use is going to be depleted because people are going to realize they can work from home. And what it's going to do is it's going to increase the need for these storage facilities. If you're a professional like an attorney and you need to store files, if you're in some related trade and you no longer want to spend, $35 a square foot for office space, this offers you a possibility of having access to a cheaper alternative for the purposes of storage while you can work from home. So I do think that this use does fit in. It fits in with the town's plan itself, as evidenced by the change of zone for the adjoining parcel. And I think that we've taken extensive steps to make this as accommodating and as welcoming aesthetically because of the elements and what we stated before. And we thank you for your consideration on this change of zone.
Thank you. Sean, did you want to respond to any of those comments about the privacy, et cetera, in the traffic?
So one thing to note about the privacy is all of the garage doors, all the entranceways don't directly face, I'll call it the southwest for lack of better direction. And so there shouldn't be any activity really next door to that house, except for the occasional car that's going to go around the building and leave the site from there. The covenants also call for the applicant to leave as many of those trees in that proposed buffer area as possible. And I don't know if anyone's been to the site or they can see Google Street View on their computers. There are substantially tall trees there, so it does help add to the privacy. If there's any voids in the buffer, the applicant will be required to infill plant them. Should also be noted that the corner property is general service D. That could be used for an office or medical office. By incorporating the other residential piece into it, you actually get the access to that site further away from the intersection and completely off Sunrise Highway, which is actually safer. So there are some traffic benefits given the lack of volume that would be generated by the proposed use, as well as where the access would actually be. So I just want to note that those are some mitigating circumstances to some of the concerns raised by the public.
Are there any comments or questions further from the board?
Yes.
I do. I have a question for Sean. So Sean, while you say all the mitigating factors, I understand that. Are there lights on the side of the building that would be reflected into or near the property of Monique's property?
I would defer to the engineer on the project, but as terms of the town code, that light's not allowed to trespass. That's got to shine downwards. We haven't reviewed a lighting plan in light of this. If it didn't comply with the lighting plan, it would be referred back to either the planning board or the zoning board to vet any variances or if it didn't meet those code qualifications.
We haven't, if I may, I don't know, respond to that, but we haven't fully designed a lighting plan yet. In situations like this, we're always cognizant of residential neighbors nearby. And actually what I'm showing on, if I can bring this back up. Hope you're seeing my right screen here.
Yeah.
But the way that we're showing it on our plan right now is the light poles with outside shields pointed in towards the site. And there's really not a lot of room here that the lights have to cover and light up. So we could, the idea would probably be when we get to design phase for them, would be to cut them down in height as much as possible because they don't really have to throw that far. And we're not proposing, as you can see, any building mounted lights in this area for that very reason.
That vegetation that's illustrated there, is there going to be a berm or is it ground level?
We can install a berm because the idea is to keep as much of the existing vegetation there as possible, and we don't want to negatively impact that. So the idea is to leave as many of the trees there as we can and then infill wherever we can with additional trees.
And what kind of fencing is proposed?
Right now, I believe that is chain link with slats, if I'm not mistaken.
And what kind of shrubbery is proposed?
Yeah, chain link with slats. We have not designed the landscaping plan yet. When we do go in front of the planning board, it will be to whatever amount that they want. I think is the discussion that we had when we were in front of the planning board to get to this point.
You already went before the planning board. Okay. All right. It sounds like you still have a lot of work to do.
I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Certainly, Councilman O'Connor.
Based on the comments from the members of the public, and they'll be addressed to either Sean or the applicant, but I think they deserve to be answered. So the one woman who spoke first, or I believe it might have been our friend, the architect, who spoke second, seemed to say that since neighboring properties were residential, that this should remain residential. And I heard Sean say in his remarks that the proposed GSD is not only applicable for part of this parcel, but it is also not out of character with what we see along Sunrise Highway. Is that correct, Sean?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Second question, I guess, is partially to Sean, but partially, I guess, to the applicant and their experience in running these facilities. There were some issues raised as it relates to safety of the operations. Somebody talked about bringing in a box truck who doesn't know how to operate a box truck and causing havoc in the community for people driving trucks who don't know how to drive trucks. And another comment was mentioned about criminal activity. And then a final comment was raised about homelessness and people sleeping in their storage lockers. Sean, we have a fair amount of these storage facilities in our township, do we not?
We do have a number pending that are pretty much ready to be built, so to speak.
I'm not only talking about pending, I'm talking about operational.
We have ample, yes.
And do we see those types of problems with the existing facilities in the township?
In terms of safetyness, homelessness, and crime, those are not complaints that my department has fielded.
No, nor have I from my office. But I guess I guess I put it directly to the applicant since this is their business area. Those issues were raised. Is there any validity to any of those as you see in your operational model throughout the country?
No, sir. Again, I'll just reiterate that we have a very secure, well-lit, safe facility. And there's just no way that someone would be able to sleep in a unit. We have several cameras monitoring the facility throughout. So we haven't encountered those issues.
And I guess I would ask the question, in the crazy scenario where that were the case, would you permit that? Would you permit that at one of your facilities?
We would never permit for someone to sleep in a unit.
Last question I had, I guess, again, raised by the comments from the neighbors was traffic. Sean, some of the other proposed uses in GSD, I think I heard you mention in your initial remarks, some of the other proposed uses in GSD generate a lot more traffic than a storage facility, self-storage facility. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Are there any questions? Any other
Just
questions? comments?
One of the members of the public asked a question about the hours of operation, and I believe they're addressed in the covenants, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Is that correct, Sean?
That's correct.
Councilwoman Mullen, I believe, had a question.
Yeah, I actually have one one remark. I'm looking at the operational restrictions. It says the hours of operation and the garbage pickup shall not occur before 8 a.m. Is that correct, Sean? Is that something that would be in the covenant?
Yes, that's a general hourly restriction we place when a commercial property is near residences.
And my second comment is, you know, I'm looking at the site plan here, and it appears there's only one way in and one way out on Oakdale Bohemia Road. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there's no entrance on Sunrise Highway?
Correct.
Is there a reason why that was put on Oakdale Bohemia Road and not Sunrise Highway?
I mean, I'll defer to the engineer. However, generally speaking, New York State DOT prefers to not have access along Sunrise Highway because it does conflict with the through movements along Sunrise and, you know, would contribute to congestion. They generally prefer to see access from the side streets, which have much less traffic and then would generate fewer conflicts along their thoroughfares.
Okay, but there, it appears that this is just a little bit south of the service road, and there is quite a bit of traffic that runs north-south on Oakdale Bohemia Road. Was a traffic study done here?
No, because something like a mini storage warehouse doesn't generate, you know, the significant volumes that would typically warrant a traffic study. That's not to say we don't ask for them at specific locations. But that issue did not come up at the planning board hearing or in preliminary meetings with the applicant.
Thank you.
A question just came in about the hours of operation. If you could just reiterate, there was some concern as to whether or not this was a 24/7 operation. Sean, could you please?
Yep. So the covenants limit the hours of operation for the property from 6 a.m. To 10 p.m. And I
Is that
believe
7 days a week?
That's correct.
Can I ask the operator what their hours of operation would be?
Our operating hours would be from 9 to 6 with access 6 to 10. It is not 24 hours.
And is it 7 days a week?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other, I'm sorry.
No.
Are there any other questions or comments?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to close the hearing, accept the negative deck, and approve the change.
Councilman, would you be
Cochran.
willing to amend that motion to include the covenant restriction that the FAR would have to just remain only with the mini storage use?
I make that, yes, I concur with that.
Is there a
So close the
second?
hearing, yep, accept the negative deck, make the change to the FAR, and approve the change of zone.
Is there a second?
No.
So I will second. I'm sorry, I was waiting.
Sorry, thank
Sorry.
you. Okay. It's kind of hard to see everybody because the rendering is still up on the screen, so it's been diminished there. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 4 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion is approved, again, with that additional covenant restriction. Thank you.
Just so we're clear, the additional covenant will state that the FAR of 1.0, if granted by the zoning board,
If granted by the zoning board,
will only follow with the use of a mini storage.
correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for your time. Be well.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, the next application, item 5 on the agenda is
Item 5.
5343 R Squared Bayshore.
Yes, TC 5343 R Squared Bayshore LLC. The applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 5268 in order to decrease the number of apartment units and decrease the minimum gross floor area required for a commercial use. Site plan modifications may be requested as part of this application. The environmental impacts will also be assessed on this property located in the Bayshore School District, located on the northeast corner of Oak Street and Fifth Avenue, County Road 13, Bayshore, number 22 Oak Street, number 91 Fifth Avenue, Town of Islip, Suffolk County, Town Board, Town of Islip, Olga H. Murray, Town Clerk.
Okay, we can hear from the applicant, please. Mr.
Yes,
Khanna.
yes, it's Guy Germano, 4250 Veterans Memorial Highway, Holbrook, New York. For the applicant, R Squared Bayshore LLC, I want to reiterate the applicant is not the prior user of the site, a prior applicant. And the principals of the applicant are Greg Reckler and Mitchell Reckler. This application is to modify existing CNRs that were put on the property as a result of a change of zone into the downtown district several years ago. There was a problem with the size of the building and the number of units. This application is for less. The only reason we're here is because the existing CNRs specified a certain number of apartments and a certain size. So what we're asking for is a smaller building, fewer apartments with more amenities. Specifically, and I think you're familiar with the site. Do you have some of the material in front of you? If you'd like, I can go to this, I can share a screen, but the property is located on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Oak Street in Bayshore. It's adjacent to the Bayshore Railroad Station and parking lot. It's currently a very blighted condition. It requires significant environmental remediation caused by the prior uses at the site, which were an oil storage facility and also a laundry. The site is also impacted by the National Grid cleanup of the very, very old coal gasification plume that's run down through Bayshore. So this represents the cleanup of a blighted area and the construction of a building, which is actually a multifamily building, which is smaller than what was previously before this board. So the prior application, or what was previously approved, was a gross floor area of 162,000 square feet. The proposed gross floor area is 125,000 square feet and change. It's a reduction of about 36,000 square feet. The original proposal included 122 apartments. The new proposal is for 88 apartments. The parking has been adjusted as well. It's still one per unit. Actually, we're providing 90 spaces. The number of workforce housing units is maintained at 20%, which is 18. The same ratio for 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments as was previously agreed to has been maintained. It's 74 1-bedrooms and 14 2-bedrooms. Previously it was 103 1-bedrooms and 19 2-bedrooms. As for amenities, a big part of the new project is, the redesign project, is an increase in the amenities. The clubhouse has been increased in size. They've added a fitness space. And on the first floor of the apartment building, which is the one floor above the ground floor, the first floor starts above the ground floor. The ground floor has parking in it and the mechanical rooms. On that platform on the first floor, first apartment floor, you'll now have a pool. You'll have an outdoor barbecue, dining area, as well as outdoor seating and landscaped area. And all of this is accessible to all the apartment occupants. All the rest of the requirements prior, for the prior CNRs and approval have been maintained. in terms of the landscaping, in terms of improvements to the north side of Oak Street, from Fifth Avenue all the way to North Drive, which includes new sidewalks and curbs as required, decorative lighting and trees. So the rest of it remains the same. The amount of commercial space has been reduced from 3,500 to 2,400 square feet. And it's this is a transit-oriented development. It replaces an area that's been blighted for many, many years. I used to walk from my house in North Brightwaters to the train station, past this area every day. It doesn't look any better today than it did all those years ago. And that's our application. I can share a screen if you'd like to see a little bit more, but if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant at this point? I just I beg to differ about it not looking any better. We did pave last season that road there, so I take exception.
We thank you for the road paving.
Sean, if you will.
Sure. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes a code compliant building with regards to the FAR in the downtown development district. It also significantly reduces the number of apartments and therefore will reduce the overall intensity of the use. The downtown development district amenities from the previous application are still required, and the architecture is different from what was previously proposed, but is still aesthetically pleasing. So based on that, the staff has no objection to the application.
Okay, thank you. Mary, are there any people who wish to speak on this? I see one name, Kristen McCabe.
I think they're with the applicant, correct, Guy?
Oh, okay.
Yes, Kristen's with the applicant.
Are there anyone sign on to speak on this?
No one else is present.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board for either the applicant or the department?
Sean, John Cochran. Hey, are they still going to have the two properties across the street as additional parking?
Yes, that hasn't changed. Those two properties are going to be used for parking in the same way they were in the prior application. That's not before the board, because that's not part of this application, because we're not changing any of the CNRs with regard to those two properties. That's the only reason but it remains the same.
Because my concern right now is we're going to lose, if TriTech goes forward, we're going to lose a lot of parking that the ferries have, and that long-term parking on Oak Street is going to be very valuable for the residents and the people going over Fire Island, and want to make sure that we keep that for our Islip residents and not have overflow parking for this piece of property.
Yeah, no, those two parking spaces across the street on Oak Street and on the corner of Fifth and Oak are part of the project and will be completed. And they're part of the CNRs.
Mr. Germano, what's on those two parcels right now?
On the Fifth Avenue parcel is a blighted use in
storage stuff there, Guy.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's going to be removed. The property is already under contract. It's already purchased. And the other parcel on Oak Street is vacant.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for the applicant or the department?
No.
Okay, great. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing, accept the negative deck, and approve this application.
You have a second? We have a
Second.
motion by Councilman Bergen, second by Councilman Cochran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor and members of the board. Good night.
Madam Clerk, if you would, we're on item 6. If you would please read the hearing notice.
Absolutely. TC 5344, Mark Blessing. Applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 4493 to increase the maximum size of the building in order to install a canopy over an existing outside seating area. The environmental impacts will also be assessed on this property located in the Connecticut School District on the southeast side of Consuelo Place, number 3, approximately 403 feet south of Shore Drive, Oakdale, known as 3 Consuelo Place, Town of Islip, Suffolk County, posted Town Board, Town of Islip, Olga H. Murray, Town Clerk.
Okay, let us now hear from the applicant, please.
Yes, good evening, Madam Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Rick Bartlett, architect with offices at 190 Motor Parkway in Hauppauge. We're here before the town board tonight to modify existing covenants and restrictions to allow the construction of a canopy structure over an existing outdoor seating area located at the subject property, which is also known as the View Restaurant in Oakdale. That we've met with the planning board and received their approval back on May 6th. And as a matter of process, we're before you this evening to complete that process to allow the construction of this canopy. The modification to the covenants and restrictions was required as a result of the canopy counting towards building floor area, which required us to amend that maximum building floor area that's part of the covenants and restrictions, as well as addressing the other issues associated with that. There's no change to the overall building footprint, no change to the occupancy capacity, no change to outdoor seating capacity, no change to existing parking, and no change to landscaping. It's really just a matter of process to allow this canopy to be built over the existing outdoor seating area.
Any questions for the applicant at this point?
No.
I had a question.
Sure, Councilman.
I don't see any sort of proposed view or schematic of what the canopy is intended to look like. It was described for me in the briefing as a pergola, but pergola is different from a canopy. So maybe the architect could tell us what type of canopy are we talking about?
It's a manufactured modular system. It really just consists of aluminum posts and beams, and between the beams are adjustable slats that open and close with the weather. So they could open it when it's nice and sunny. If it happens to be too sunny and too hot, they can close them. But it's really just it's a flat roof structure. It's nondescript. Sean, I don't know if you still have that image that we had submitted that would at least give them an idea what it looks like. It's not an exact replication. Unfortunately, when you draw it in elevation, it just looks like a couple of lines. But
there you go. Okay.
That's basically what we're looking at.
So it would be seasonal?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I would think they could probably use it maybe 8 to 9 months out of the year.
So once
Oh,
it's
that's
up, though,
pretty.
it stays up, correct?
Yes, it's a permanent structure.
Okay.
That's pretty.
But to use it in the fall months might require a kerosene heater or something of that nature, no?
Well, I think they utilize those propane heaters now out on their patio deck. So I would assume similar application would be provided if they were to use it in that season.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
None for me.
Sean, did you have anything to add?
Nope. The department thinks it's a nice amenity to add to the alfresco dining, and it doesn't change the intensity of the use. So there's no objection from the.
All right. Is there anyone who has signed up to speak on this hearing?
No one else is present.
Thank you. If I would please ask, if you're not speaking, please mute your mic. Thank you. All right, so we have no one who's signed up to speak. Any other questions or comments for the applicant or the department?
Yes, Sean, question for you. Does this structure have to have a sprinkler system attached to it?
That I don't know. I'd actually defer to Mr. Bartlett.
I don't believe it does require it in accordance with the state code because it is an open air structure. So as far as I'm concerned, no, it does not. But
right,
if,
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing, adopt the negative declaration, and approve the change.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilwoman.
Second.
Motion, Councilwoman Mullins, second, Councilman O'Connor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you.
thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Stay safe.
You too. We'll move now to TC 5345, 812 Wheeler Road. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the hearing notice.
Thank you.
Just froze.
The applicant
You can hear my
requests
computer
some
just froze.
modification.
Excuse me?
The applicant requests a the applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 5212 in order to permit a medical office use. The environmental impacts will be assessed on this property located in the Hauppauge School District on the north side of Wheeler Road, State Route 111, number 812, approximately 130 feet west of Veterans Memorial Highway, State Route 454, Hauppauge, also known as 812 Wheeler Road, Town of Islip, Suffolk County, posted Town Board, Town of Islip, Olga H. Murray, Town Clerk.
Okay, we are ready to hear from the applicant.
For the applicant, Billy Germano of Germano and Cahill, 4250 Veterans Highway, Holbrook, New York. The applicant seeks a modification of the covenants and restrictions on the subject property to expand the permitted uses to include a 3,500 square foot medical office. In 2015, I appeared before this board with an application to change the zone of the subject premises from residential AA to business 1. All immediate neighbors are general business, commercial buildings, and the Suffolk County Water Authority. The town board approved the change of zone in November of 2015. That change of zone included a declaration of covenants and restrictions limiting the use to specialty retail, which is defined as a small strip shopping center containing a variety of retail shops, typically for apparel and goods and services. The purpose of this application is that the applicant has a prospective tenant to open a City MD urgent care facility. The tenant's space has been empty since the building was built approximately a year and a half ago. There are currently 2 operating tenants in the building, a takeout restaurant and a specialty fitness tenant. The only functioning tenant at this time due to the pandemic is the takeout specialty restaurant. City MD is a neighborhood medical office and a facility that would certainly be an asset to the community. According to my research, the nearest urgent care facility is in Comac, over 7 miles away. The building sits on 1.64 acres. The building itself is 16,500 square feet. The proposed change would affect 3,500 square feet, or about 1/5 of the building space. It's the corner unit closest to Wheeler Road. The site contains 2 cross-access connections as they currently exist and they're depicted on the approved site plans. The applicant, the subject parcel is subject to a permanent cross-access easement agreement with the adjoining property owner. So all customers from both commercial centers could easily access the surrounding network of roads. Traffic impact assessment was completed and submitted to the planning department, and it concluded that the proposed project would not significantly impact traffic flow, parking, and safety on the surrounding roadways, and that the level of traffic associated with a 3,500 square foot medical office is similar to the traffic associated with a 3,500 square foot retail space. Based on the foregoing, we respectfully request that the board grant the application.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? You said that the nearest urgent care, if you will, is 7 miles away in Comac. This really would service the central Islip community also very well.
Yes, Supervisor. Certainly very important.
Any questions or comments for the applicant? All right, let's go to the department, Sean.
Yep. So the staff concurs with the applicant. This would have negligible traffic impacts over what a typical retail user would generate. And it is a complementary use for the center. It helps fill it up, and then the uses feed off each other, and it makes it more successful. So the staff has no objection to this application.
Great. Any questions for the department?
I just had one question.
Certainly, Jim.
Sean, I'm looking at the aerial that you provided us with in advance of tonight's meeting, and it shows that the lot is currently vacant. Is that accurate?
No, it's been developed with the shopping center.
Okay, that's what I was understanding from the applicant. So the aerial is dated then?
Yes, it's I believe that's a 2016 aerial, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary, are there any speakers on this?
Nobody else, just your client, Billy. Did they want to be heard?
No.
Okay. So if there are no further questions for the applicant or the department, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to close the hearing, accept the negative deck, and approve the modifications to the CNR.
Thank you, Councilman Cochran. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilwoman Mullen. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move then to application number 8, TC 5346, Bolson Restaurant Group. Madam Clerk, please.
Thank you. Tonight's last hearing, the Bolson Restaurant Group, the applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC number 3733 in order to request a variance for a second ground sign. The environmental impacts will be assessed on this property located in the East Islip School District on the southeast corner of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, number 166, and Suffolk Lane, East Islip, also known as 166 West Montauk Highway, Town of Islip, Suffolk County. Hosted Town Board, Town of Islip, Olga H. Murray, Town Clerk.
Okay, we will now hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Madam Supervisor, Town Board members, Ms. Murray, Mr. DeSico, and Mr. Colgan. My name is Janice Whalen. I'm the applicant's attorney. My office is at 424 New York Avenue, Huntington, New York. We are requesting a modification of town code covenants imposed in 1989, which restrict us from making application for a second ground sign. I believe that that was an outdated template at the time it was used. All we're asking for is permission to go to the ZBA to legalize existing signage at the H2O restaurant. Again, the town code covenant that prohibits us from going straight to the ZBA basically said we could seek no further relief. I've spoken extensively to the planning department about this. We've been before the planning board. I have Mr. Bolson right here. The sign we're seeking to legalize has been there for very many years. It's a corner sign. And even when it was Beech Tree Cafe, there was a sign in that same exact location. We're not seeking to add any signs, just to legalize what we have. The planning department has presented us with proposed covenants and restrictions, which we are in full agreement with.
At this point, why don't we just hear from the department on this? Sean?
Thank you, Supervisor Carpenter. As stated by the applicant, they are looking to modify the sign covenant to the typical covenant by the town board that permits sign variances to be pursued after review and approval of the planning department. The applicant, should this application be approved, will still need to make a case before the Zoning Board of Appeals for the various sign variants they're looking for. So to remain consistent with current policy, the staff has no objection to the request and feels the board should modify the covenant as requested.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions at this point for the applicant or the department?
I just had one quick question for Sean, if I could.
Sure, Jim.
Sean, just in terms of process, or JR, if you could jump in. So the applicant is seeking to legalize an existing structure. So if the town board were to approve or lessen the covenants and restrictions as they exist, the applicant would then file their permit with the building department. It would get a notice of disapproval where they'd have to go to the Board of Zoning and Appeals, and then the Board of Zoning and Appeals then would rule on the legalization of the existing sign. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe they have to seek an area variance.
So since it is legalization, it will require additional building department fees, yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ridiculous.
Okay. Mary, has anyone signed to speak on this?
Yes, we have one person who wants to be heard and one person who's just listening and said she may not want to be heard.
Okay, so who wants to be heard? If you would raise your hand or please speak.
Okay, Irene Ferguson.
Okay, would just your name and address, please, for the record?
Yes, Irene Ortieri Ferguson, 170 West Main Street, East Islip, New York. And I am the owner of the building, 170 West Main Realty Corp. Right now I have my husband and my son, the Ferguson Family Medicine medical office there. I'm a registered nurse and I have no problems with this application. I approve of it. I think it will be an asset to the neighborhood and to the street. So I'm here. I waited all this time. So I just wanted to tell you that I am in full approval of this application.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. And Mary, you said there's someone else who's just listening who does not want to speak?
Yes, I've asked her in the chat if she wants to say anything, and earlier she had said she didn't think she was going to speak. She was just going to listen.
Okay. Well, hope she's still listening. Okay, so are there any other comments or questions for the applicant or the department?
Supervisor, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me because I'm having technical difficulties on my line. Am I still audible?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Good. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing, accept the negative declaration, and approve this application.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion by Councilwoman Bergen, second by Councilwoman Mullen. All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
It is approved.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all of your efforts and thank you, Mr. Colgan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, that takes us to the last item on the agenda, which is the decision item, TC 5338. Madam Clerk, I guess there's really nothing for you to.
There's no notice, Madam Supervisor.
Right. Okay. So if you would please, Sean, since this is a decision item, there's really no opportunity for the applicant, but I would like to hear from the department so that everyone is aware of what we have before us today.
Sure. So this application was heard back in February. There were concerns from the neighborhood about the change of zone to a commercial use within what's primarily residential area. Although to the west, there is an auto body shop that was rezoned to Business 3 back in the mid-2000s. Across the street, across Montauk Highway, there are commercial uses. So it's not unusual for the board to rezone such a property to general service T because it acts as transitional use from these more commercial uses to the residences. The applicant, or excuse me, the public raised concerns regarding the auto body shop about the on-street parking. The fire marshal's office did have the opportunity to look into the on-street parking. They did observe on-street parking, but they noted there was no illicit parking. No one was in violation of any traffic signs. There are no unregistered vehicles on the streets, and no one was parking on the sidewalk. The staff did send the board the minutes of the previous hearing, so you guys could have the opportunity to review the testimony and follow up with any additional concerns or questions that the public had at that time. But just to summarize, the applicant is proposing a modest-sized office building. It's not anticipated to generate significant traffic through that area, and they're providing significant buffers to the west, north, and east to the maximum extent practical to balance out the impacts and aesthetics to all the surrounding residences. So to the staff's opinion is this is the best site plan they could put forward for what they are specifically proposing with regards to the approximately 3,200 square foot office building. There are covenants that limit the types of uses that can go in there, again, to kind of mitigate the in and out of traffic into and out of the site. You're not looking at large scale office, medical office buildings that could particularly generate a lot of traffic within this type of user zone. So the covenants we put before you, we think mitigate most of the concerns that the public has. But again, it is a change of zone. It was changed to General Service C some years back for six single family homes for senior citizens. But the applicant has made the argument that that's no longer feasible due to transfer of development rights that came from this property to other properties, and he can't develop the property given the limits of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services. So this is the proposal today, and we feel we've done the best we can given the applicant's request.
Sean, did you, if you said it and I didn't hear, I apologize, but was there any reference made to a dumpster being eliminated?
Yeah, so this type of use, they have offered to provide a cleaning service in lieu of a dumpster, so we wouldn't anticipate to hear any garbage truck backing up into the site. I'll have to take a look at the covenants just to verify.
There will be no dumpster, Madam Supervisor.
I'm sure I can. Yep, that's a condition of the site plan.
And also any deliveries would be limited to the hours between 8 and 7. Is that correct? Sean?
We have different covenants set here. That is correct.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
None.
I do.
Certainly. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I know Mr. DiNicola made a representation when he came before the board back in February that there were 2 tenants. Is that still the case? You said that there were 2 tenants that were willing to rent this office building.
Right now, that is the current case. One is a computer type of operation, and the other is the owner of the property. They'll be taking the entire space as of this meeting.
I have a follow-up question to Sean. Do you know, back in 2011, was this ever presented to either the planning department or the town board as an office building? Are you aware of that?
I don't recall the exact year. I could look it up for you, but yeah, approximately 9 to 10 years ago, there was a proposal to rezone it to General Service T for approximately twice the size as being proposed now. So roughly a 7,000 square foot office building.
Do you know whether or not that was ever voted on?
It never came to the town board that I can recall. I think it was withdrawn by the applicant. I can look it up now.
Kate, would you like him to see if he can find that out for you?
Sure, that would be great if you can do it while we're here. Otherwise, it's okay.
I believe that is the case. I did not represent the applicant at that time, but I do believe that there was, under the direction of Commissioner Murphy, to file an application for an office use, and subsequently it was withdrawn for some reason.
Yes, I don't see a town board date in our system, so it appears it was withdrawn after a planning board public hearing.
Are there any other questions, Kate? No. Any other comments or questions from the board?
None.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion. I'll motion to close the public, the public hearing's already closed, so just make a motion to approve the application.
We have a motion.
Or is it already, or is it open, Madam Supervisor?
No, you can make the motion. John,
All right, so just to approve.
JR, did you?
Yeah, the public hearing was closed previously.
Thank you. Yes, I make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. Councilman Cochran?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion, Councilwoman Bergen, second by Councilman Cochran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Well, hold on. Councilwoman Bergen made the motion.
Right. And
Motion
Council,
was to approve the application and also, I'm assuming, to adopt the neg deck.
Yes, sir.
so we have the motion by Councilwoman Bergen to approve the resolution, adopt a neg deck, and a second by Councilman Cochran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
I'm going to abstain.
Oh,
Yes.
all right, so it fails for a
Motion
lack.
fails. So it's 2-2 and 1 abstention. Motion fails. Is there anything else to come before us?
No.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Motion by Councilman O'Connor, second
Second.
by Councilwoman Mullen. All those in favor? Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.